Well, this is a special broadcast for the Community of Practice series. I wasn't really expecting to make this particular video, but the opportunity has come before us, and it's too good with potentially too important of learnings to pass it by. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Capilano River in Vancouver. Probably you would be familiar with at least the tourism aspects of it. So, in case you did not see the news this morning, there has been a significant tragedy at the Cleveland Dam, which is upstream on the Capilano River. And if you want to know all the inner details of that, you can go to any of these references, and they're coming up quite quickly on Google this morning, as you can well imagine. So at least one person is dead, and several other persons have been injured. And while I was watching this on the news this morning, honest to God, my first thoughts were being on the scene at a mishap like this. And you're going down through in your mind the tick lists of, what level of incident are you going to find yourself involved in here? Did it affect anything outside of the company's property? Well, that's obviously a yes. Was there resulting loss in life? Unfortunately, there has been. Was it a loss of life outside of the company employee group? Yes, and in fact, it was a complete civilian, and as far as I know, so were the people injured. Did this become the subject of national media attention? And it certainly did this morning, and I suppose in my way I'm adding to that media attention. So if you're trained in emergency response, that checklist got you right to the top of your level of emergency declaration, and as well it should. This is no small incident. We can see Mike is reporting on Twitter here. I've pulled his feed. We're talking about a 3-meter rise in the river, and it looks like Mike's got some solid data to back this up in something like 3 minutes. 3 meters, a meter a minute. Can you run that fast? Can you swim that hard? To all reports, there was no prior warning, and indeed what's coming out of so far coming from the operators themselves are that this was an accident. And here's where I think things start to go wrong. The exact words they're using this morning is this was an accident in the course of routine maintenance. So routine is one of those big words that I highly advise people not to use. And when you use routine in reference to brownfield maintenance activities, you set yourself up for mishaps. And mishaps in our line of work have much bigger consequences than mishaps in the kitchen at home typically do. So I would imagine, I've never worked at this site, just to be clear, but I would think almost all of us that are in this kind of business would expect that these sluice gates are there for a reason, and there will be an emergency use scenario imagined for the use of these gates. And it would be beyond imagining in this day and age that there would not be a critical operating procedure dictating how those gates would be, put in service if some level of emergency should require that. I mean, if that critical operating procedure is not in place with this particular operator, then That'll also come out during what's going to be a very significant investigation starting today, and that won't go very well for him either. In that procedure would, you know, almost certainly be some kind of notification of downstream persons and assets that you were going to create a 3-meter rise in river levels in 3 minutes. So that's all what should be a matter of record, and the investigators will either find that, in which case that's what they should find, or they won't find it, in which case the operator of this dam is going to have even bigger questions than they're currently facing. So I'm bringing this all up and tying it back to the community of practice discussions because although this is a water control dam and doesn't in any way meet the levels of sophistication that our teams are typically accountable for looking after, it does demonstrate very, very clearly the potentials for brownfield maintenance activities of any kind. I mean, from what I'm hearing on the news, this wasn't project activity. This wasn't anything that we would call turnaround related. The exact words, again, used by, at least repeated by the media this morning, were routine maintenance. So I'm not here to guess at what the levels of experience involved were. I'm not here to suppose of whether standard operating procedures and critical operating procedures, A, existed and B, were followed. I just want to, try to get some good out of this tragedy by using it to highlight that even in a relatively unsophisticated operation like a water control dam, the ever-present dangers of brownfield work and the ways that can impact our client, or unfortunately in this case, the outside world, can't be overstated. And the safety aspects involved with the work we do and making sure we have the right team doing the right things, they're not exaggerations to try to increase one team's profile over another, nor are they, marketing ploys from very reputable contractors. They are simple facts. The business of brownfield maintenance and project execution comes with very significant risks. And the utilization of less than completely expert teams opens operators and owners, the client base, up to the type of investigation that the operators of the Cleveland Dam will almost certainly be facing going forward. So, like I say, this wasn't planned to be a part of one of my execution excellence presentations, but it came on the news this morning. And even though it's not a petrochemical complex or a powerhouse or an oil refinery or any of the types of facilities that you and I typically work on, it's still very pertinent to the type of work we do and very pertinent to the discussion we've been having about the specialized nature of brownfield work, be it more project size work like we're talking about, or as the unfortunate events just past have shown us, even in the case of routine maintenance. So what I would ask out of the community this morning is if we take it upon ourselves to set an example, and we be the first people who Just do not accept the use of big, momentous words like routine. Always. Never. Forever. These are big words because they put on the blinders and they lead us down the road to fatal error. On behalf of the NAVEX team, I'd like to send my condolences to the families of the injured and deceased. And I don't need to point out to anybody that this was not an example of execution excellence. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.